Hello, I'm Nick Tumminello, founder of Performance University, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Performance Warm-Up Progressions video series. These videos will introduce you to a complete system for using creative warm-up progressions that will not only increase the productivity of your sessions, but get your clients and athletes ready for anything. Although not exhaustive in nature, these videos will display the most effective and popular protocols we use to warm up our clients on a daily basis. In this video, we're going to be talking about CNS activation. CNS stands for Central Nervous System Activation. CNS activation enables us to improve timing and rhythm, to increase overall coordination, and to prepare the body for fast and explosive movements. We develop the protocols, we test them, we refine them until we come out with a product that we know is battle tested and very effective and safe, which is what I'm bringing you here today. So what I'm going to show you is the third aspect of our warm-up. That's the final aspect, the CNS activation. So number one, we start off with a good old-fashioned squat. Couple key components to a squat. First of all, we want to interlace our fingers, open our elbows up. I always tell people that when they stand, they should stand shoulder width apart. If you need to turn your toes out 5 degrees, that's okay, but we try not to go into a plie type stance. That tends to mean some hip dysfunctions or ankle dysfunction. So from here, I want to keep my elbows out, just drop into a good old-fashioned squat, and come back up. Okay? If I start to see some things looking like this, I'm not ready to progress yet. Okay, so we need to be able to bang out 10 perfect squats before we can move on to the next progression. Okay, squats are pretty fundamental, so I don't think I really need to spend too much time there. We want to make sure that the knees stay in line with the toes, the heels don't pop up, parallel shin angle to torso angle, and the hands should not be coming forward. So that's a level one. Most people understand what a good squat is. Level 2, we're going to start adding in some speed because this is nervous system activation and we're trying to prepare the body for explosive, quick type of movements. So, all I'm going to do is kind of pull myself down now. Pull myself down and explode myself up off of my heels because I'm building some momentum. So, doing almost what they call a calf raise is a good thing here. So, this is level 2. That good form, but I just add in speed. Okay? Now, speed increases momentum. Momentum means more load. So these are a lot harder than they look. And you can hear I'm breathing a little bit. So level 3, I want to start bringing this into a jump because the next progression from a squat is a squat jump. You'll notice when people jump, they not only just use their upper or lower body, but they use their upper body to explode. This requires good timing and rhythm and coordination from the floor all the way to the fingertips. So we're going to break that down and make that our level 3 in our squat CNS progression. So we're going to start in this position and explode upwards, coming to the tippy toes. And then we throw that speed in. Okay, here we go from a profile. Same good form, not from here. Explode up, pull yourself down. Really extend up and drive myself back down. Okay? So we have all 3 levels of a squat progression. It's a fundamental exercise, but the fundamentals are still what we need to stick with. So squat is very important. That's the first exercise in our CNS activation progressions. Alright, so number 2, we really have no progression to this. I know this is CNS activation progressions, but really everybody can do their own version of this, so there's only one level. And the more dynamic you make it, the harder you make it, so everybody will work to their level on this one. So you only get one progression on this. Basically, what I always tell people is just bounce off your heels, all your joints are loose, and just kind of move how your body wants to move. So very simple, non-technical, and I'm off my heels. If you see, just kind of bouncing very loose. Some people, when they do this, they twist, they bring their arms up, everything is nice and loose. This may seem very silly and non-technical, no form really into it, but anytime you watch a sporting event, basketball, baseball, mixed martial arts in particular, boxing, combative sports, football, what's the first thing you see athletes do when they get on the field? Before their coaches grab them and give them their very technical warm-up, this is what you see them do. So I looked at that and I said, well, if every athlete's body, brain, CNS, whatever, naturally tells them to do that, then that's got to be an ingrained pattern that works to warm us up and prepare us. So why not throw that in the warm-up? So that's kind of how my brain works, and since we've been doing that, people just seem to go, yeah, I like that, I like how it feels. So again, loose wrist, loose elbows, loose shoulders. That helps you transfer force if you're doing things like Olympic lifts and jumping, to be tight down here but relaxed up here. And if you want to mix it up a little bit, that's fine. We do this for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then we move on to the more technical progressions. So that's number 2 sequence in our CNS activation. All right, so here we are with our 3rd exercise in our CNS activation warm-up progression. We're going to talk about just a good old-fashioned skip. Now, a lot of people would look at a skip and go, oh, that's a little too advanced, it's a little too plyometric, because it is technically plyometric type of movement. And they might hold off on giving that to certain people who are lower level clients. But I would have to ask you this. If your clients or you yourself are running is plyometric. And if you can run without any pain or aches and pains or limitations, then you can do skips. So if you're playing tennis, that's plyometric. If you're playing sports, you're running, those are all plyometric. So sometimes we've got to use our common sense and sit back and go, wait a minute, is this really that difficult? But if it is, you don't have to start at a skip, you start at just a good old-fashioned march. Okay? So, a couple key tips on marching. I want to make sure I get the movement from my hip when I bring my knee up and not from my pelvis and back. So instead of me bringing my shoulder down to my knee, I want to bring my knee up to my shoulder, keeping this straight. Okay? Nice and tall. So that shows good core strength and builds good hip mobility and stability on the opposite side. So mobility here, stability there. So just a good old-fashioned march. Okay? Then we can take that next progression into a skip. Alright? Nothing really different about that except I'm bouncing off the ground. Number 3, I would just tell an advanced athlete just to get a little bit higher and punch their feet into the ground. So instead of just a lackadaisical skip, I'm really punching. Okay? One foot down, other knee up. That's called reciprocal training. Okay? Like this. So from side view, again, torso tall, good running mechanics, elbows at 90, really powering through. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We'll do that one time through. The next time through we do it, whether you're doing level 1, level 2, or level 3, we'll change from a contralateral movement, right knee, left elbow, to an ipsilateral movement, same side. So now I'm here, or level 1 I'm here, level 2 here, and level 3 is here. You can see that's very tough. Now why would I do something like that? Because that's not really correct movement. Okay, when I'm walking, I normally go opposite. If you think about a boxer who's right-handed, I'm a right-handed boxer. If I were to punch with my left hand, I'm going to step with that same hip. That's ipsilateral, not contralateral. This is contralateral. Tennis, same thing. Backhand, same side. A basketball layup, sometimes same side. So not everything that we do is a contralateral movement. So it's important for us to stimulate both patterns. So I recommend doing your skips or marches one time the normal way, the traditional way. And then if you really want to activate the nervous system and stimulate some coordination, switch it around and go the opposite way. Give that a shot. You'll not only find that it really does test your coordination and improve your coordination, but you'll start to see people, if you're a trainer, kind of start to look up and try to find the movement pattern. So anytime you see that happening, you're definitely activating the nervous system. That's your march and skip progression. Alright, here we are. We've just done the skips. Now we're going to go into jumping jacks. The beauty of a jumping jack is it changes the plane from more sagittal, which a skip was, to more of a frontal plane, which is more side to side. So, a couple things on a jumping jack. Not everybody can do a regular jumping jack. So, our level 1 progression would simply be, without the jump part, just lifting the hand and the leg. Okay? So, most athletes would never have to worry about this. But you have some older folks or people that have bad knees, bad ankles, bad hips, or just have a hard time dealing with impact. The people that would do well with marching are the same people that you would use this for. Okay? Now, level 2 would be a regular jumping jack. So, right in here. Doesn't need much explanation. We've all done those since school. Couple little key points on a jumping jack. If you lift your shoulders up, a lot of people will have their hands in different positions. Okay? Some of these positions are good, some of them are bad. If you want to save your shoulders, and we have a whole training concept called joint-friendly training, it's a whole other DVD. We talk about how to minimize joint stress but maximize results. Well, this is a position right here, this is an exercise where a lot of people are putting their body through more stress, mainly their shoulders through more stress than they need to be. You want to keep your hands in neutral, and then your palms should come up to clap at the top. If you're like this, or like this, you're actually, without getting too technical, you're closing down your shoulder joint. You're reducing the space here, and that can cause a little bit of friction, eventually impingement, rotator cuff problems, blah, blah, blah. So we want to avoid that. So what I always tell people is, don't just give me half movements, give me full movements, but clap at the top. This puts your shoulder at the most neutral, see? Neutral position. So when I'm doing my jumping jack, I clap. Okay? So, this way, not this way, definitely not this way. Now, level 3, just a slight tweak. We're going to address the ankles here. Good mechanics in any locomotive activity, running, walking, sprinting, or any court sports, because you're running there, involve ankle dorsiflexion, toes up, or we say toes to the nose. So we want to reinforce that when we do our jumping jacks. So instead of just keeping my toes down, which you'll see a lot of people do, every time I jump, I want to flick my ankle up, like that, like an arcing movement. Okay? So how that would look in a full jumping jack is this. So you see the toes coming up, and you notice the timing and rhythm is better, the air time I get is better, so that will not only carry over into your sports, again, coordination through the roof there, and this really reinforces fundamental locomotive and bimotor patterns. That's the jumping jack progression. Okay, number 5, CNS activation progression. This is the 5th exercise in our series. So far we've covered skips, jumping jacks, squats, heel bounces. Your temperature should already be up. Nervous system is already very active. You're already ready for some activity, but we even have more for you. The last thing we finished with was jumping jacks, which were very frontal plane movement. So we need to throw in some rotational plane, so transverse plane. So we're going to keep the leg movement fairly consistent with the jumping jack. But in the seal jack, or seal jump as some people say, we're going to add a transverse plane action to the arms. Okay? Now the level 1, very similar to the jumping jack we showed where you're not really involving much impact. Same thing here. I'm just going to step and open up, step and open up. Okay? Just like this. So again, this is for somebody who has knee trouble, ankle trouble, trouble dealing with impact, and they don't like to jump. Level 2, which is where most of your athletes will start, is the fundamental pattern right here. Okay? Now, one thing I want you to notice about my position right here. Okay? This goes along with this whole clap concept. Shoulder health, joint-friendly movement. Many times when you see people do a traditional seal jump, their hands come straight out. And sometimes they're like this. All right? That's not horrible. But as you open up, if you have good movement patterns at your shoulder, your wrist should end up above your elbow. Okay? Elbow can be fairly parallel with the shoulder, but your wrist should be above your elbow. That's because with a certain amount of horizontal abduction, bringing my arms like this, there should be some external rotation that goes along with it. If that doesn't happen, you're fairly internally rotation dominant. Not very healthy for your shoulders. I'm not going to get into the specifics of why, but it's not very healthy for your shoulders. Okay? So you'll have to trust me on that one. So when we do our seal jumps, seal jacks, the action comes from below the chin and then above my forehead or eye level. Okay? That doesn't have to be perfect, but basically what I'm looking at is fairly an angled movement as opposed to directly horizontal. That's if you want to keep your shoulders healthy. If you want to ruin your shoulders, because you're already probably doing a lot of things that help ruin them anyway, start doing it the old way. You want to do it the smarter way, the Performance U way, you do it the way I'm telling you. So, again, I'm here. Just like that. Now, the third progression, we add in that same ankle sequence that we did in the jumping jack, where I want to get the toes coming up every time. So, good spring. Okay? Every time I'm bouncing off the floor, increasing my plyometric ability, timing and rhythm, the whole 9 yards. That's a smarter, more effective, more efficient way and more shoulder healthy way to do seal jumps, and you have a 3-level progression. Okay, so we've just gone over jumping jacks and seal jacks. Now, as I told you in the skip, we do both contralateral movement, opposite, and we do ipsilateral movement to really increase coordination, kind of test your ability to do something different and new. We're going to do the same, we're going to take that same method of thinking and put it to the jumping jack. And why I started thinking about this concept, because it seems a little backwards and not a lot of people are doing it, is if you've ever read any of those books or articles that say, you know, if you're right-handed, you should brush your teeth with your left hand because it keeps your brain young and improves your coordination. Well, I just want to bring that into the sports training and personal training arena. And we can easily take that same concept and bring it right here into these movements like skips and jumping jacks. So again, if you really want to test people's coordination and really make sure the nervous system is active, make them do something that's different, that they've never done before. We've all done jumping jacks. Maybe the toe thing is slightly different. People will pick that up fast. But when you throw in a whole different movement pattern, you really will get a lot more activation, and it will help them in the end when they have to do unpredictable or things they've never done before in a sporting environment. So if you do it in training and it happens in sport, they're prepared for it. If you don't do it in training and it happens in sport and they're not prepared for it, the chance of them failing or getting injured goes way up, and we don't want that. So in the jumping jack, instead of moving the same, so leg and arm abduct at the same time, like this, okay, which is level 1, we would do the opposite. Okay, there's a couple ways to do that. I can either bring this hand down, okay, we can do it this way, opposite, okay, or I can move opposite this way. All right? In a regular jumping jack, it might be a little easier to see. So normally I'd bring the hands up when the feet are out, and when the feet are in, the hands are down by the sides. I'm just going to switch that. Start here. Hands come down as the feet go out. Alright, so that's how you would flip the jumping jack, and of course you don't forget about your ankles. And kind of put people to the test a little bit and make them really use their nervous system. As far as the seal jack goes, same thing. We would normally start with the feet this way, hands this way, and open up together. Okay? So I can do opposite. Just change the movement pattern a little bit. Or if you, the level 2 progression, I'm going to start out, feet go out, hands go in. Alright, these are a little bit harder than they look if you've never done them before. So, you want to have a little fun, test yourself, really activate your nervous system, and get yourself breathing and get your heart rate up, get ready for some activity. This is the way to do it. So that's how you can take a traditional jumping jack and progress it, regress it, and really test athletes of all levels. Alright, so where we finished off with the seal jumps was with our hands like this. And I like things to be very fluid, kind of like yoga, one position to the other. So as soon as we end up here, we're going to move from this position. So what we're going to do to start is arms are straight, torso tall, and I want to move my shoulders with my hips. Okay? I'm going to rotate this way. So you notice my shoulders and hips are fairly close. If my shoulders go slightly beyond my hips, that's okay too. The most important part about this is that my foot, the one that I'm rotating on, my left foot, stays fairly flat. It's going to open up a little bit. Okay? This is pronation, this is supination. It's going to supinate slightly. As long as your big toe stays flat, you're alright. If your big toe comes up, you're going too far. Okay? Or you have some hip limitations, but that's beyond the scope of this video. I'm going to come as far as I can here, not forcing anything. Head follows my body. Okay? If you're a golfer or a tennis player, someone that needs to have their head looking one way but their body rotating independently, then I would advise you to stay looking the same way, because now we're getting some cervical mobility in there as well. But that's not a necessity. It just depends on the sport that you play. So once I rotate here, I'm just going to come back, rotate the other way. Now we're going to talk about the feet a little bit more. Every time I do this, I should have one foot pointed straight ahead, so right towards you. And then when I come back, this foot should be pointed, regain its straight position, and to the other side. Okay? If as I do this, I end up with my feet duck toes, if I have some athletes do it, all of a sudden I say stop, and they look like that, what that tells me is they don't have good internal rotation. This is internal rotation here, and it's internal rotation there. They don't have good internal rotation, and what's happening is, instead of their hip internal rotators lengthening, I'll show you this way, instead of them lengthening, they want to try to shorten, okay, because they don't have the capacity to lengthen all that well. Or that's a control issue. Either way, this is something that needs to be worked on. So you can either address it further into the session, but this is a great time to really build this position up. Alright, and all we would do to make this slightly tougher, level 2, is increase the speed. Okay, again, fairly good position. Alright, now, there's always a little leeway. So if people end up like that, you can hardly see me externally rotated, but I'm like 5 degrees, that's okay. We don't want to nitpick. But if they look like this, we want to keep cueing them. So this is a great assessment tool. Now the third progression is we actually add in a little level change. And from here, so we're going to drop, and then when we explode out, we're going to hit the rotation. Okay? When we explode out, hit the rotation. Where that comes from, if I'm going to run and stop and change direction, that's what that happens. That's when that happens. Okay? So your elite level athletes, we want to get them doing this, kind of like a boxer, a bob and weave. So we just partial drop, not a full squat, and we want to integrate these patterns. And they're going to throw it hard, come back home, throw it hard. Okay, so you see how we piece these things together to get the right movements? If we just jump ahead to this third progression, people may be able to do it, but if they don't have the right awareness of where their feet should be, we haven't built up the mobility at the hips, the control of the core, things are going to start to fall apart. So this is where it really is important to understand why we do progressions to all of our warm-ups. Most people, anybody, can do the level 3 progressions of all of them, but it's how well that they do them. So by moving through these progressions, it not only makes your job as a coach, if you're a coach, easier, because these progressions build on themselves, but it makes it a lot easier on clients and athletes who've never done this kind of thing before, because Now they know how to do it right because we've already built the awareness in. So easier on the coach, easier on the client, much better results. So that's how we do our rotary type work for hips and torso. All right, so now we've finished our wide rotations, and we did all 3 progressions for that. We're going to move into tight rotations. Now, tight rotations are a lot harder than they look. So our level 1 progression sometimes challenges even the most beginner folks. But everybody that I've found can do this successfully with a couple simple cues. So what we're going to do is similar position to the wide rotations. We're going to stay within our shoulder width or our foot width. Okay? So you want to stand about shoulder width anyway, maybe a slight bit wider. Everybody's a little different. From here, I want to keep my hips stable. So what I tell everybody is do not let your hips move beyond a few degrees. All right? So if your pelvis was a bucket full of water to the brim, as you do this exercise, try not to spill any water. So even if you had a bucket full of water right to the top, even if you gyrated the bucket a little bit, some of that water would spill out. Okay? We want to try to avoid that. It's a good cue. Most clients understand that. From here, I'm going to go as fast as I can within these parameters. So if I had 2 walls right next to me, and they were rubber walls, I want to hit that wall as hard as I can to the left, bounce off that wall, and hit that wall as hard as I can, and do that not only for power, but for speed. Okay? Staying tall, so good posture. I don't want to look like this. Stay tall, so here's how it looks. And most people, when they do it, they're going to talk like this. All right? So that's a tight rotation. Now, where does that come from? Why do we do that? Well, if you think about 2 sports are the best example. Think about sprinting. As I'm sprinting fast, my torso is moving very quickly and changing direction from right rotation to left rotation. Very fast. Okay? There's some torque happening there, and I'm converting that torque to my lower body and to my upper body. As a boxer, boxers, when they get tired, they do this, but when they start there, everything is very tight. And the reason why you hear them breathing like that is because in many cases, you have to kind of sip air. Okay? You can't take full breaths. So there's a lot of core work that involves, it's not just involves stability, but quick rhythmic stability and changes in direction. So that's a very, very functional exercise to not only throw into your warm-up to prepare your torso and your core for those types of movements, but it's a great core exercise to add into your core programs. Okay, a little hint there. So you get a little extra bang for your buck out of this DVD for that one. Now, if we want to step that up a bit, we just add some load. Okay, so I got a 6-pound ball. I can go 8, 10, however, as long as it doesn't interfere with the technique. All right? Same concept applies. Hips stable. Stay up tall. No need to hold in your belly or anything like that. Just try to breathe normal. We always go for about 10 seconds. Fast as I can go. Okay? If you start going too wide, the hips are going to come with you. And that's where a lot of people tend to get faults. So we always just try to avoid that and say stable hips. All right? What we're finding these days, or what the researchers are finding, is that the lumbar spine, pelvis and lumbar spine, have minimal rotation. It's actually 3 degrees from vertebrae to vertebrae. There's 5 vertebrae, so there's 15 degrees of total rotation at your lumbar spine. Not a lot. But there's about 3 times that in your thoracic spine. So it's much better to think stable low, mobile high, or mobile mid. Okay? That's what this exercise reinforces. Now, a level 3 progression, what we would do is actually split up the stance. All right? So now what's happening is, put the ball down here for a second. You think about me this way, my hips are going slightly backwards, so they're rotated to my right. And if I keep my torso this way, I've already got some length happening at my abdominal. So if I tucked my shirt in and I drop my foot back, you start to see my shirt stretch this way. That's what's happening at my abdominals. All right? So if I want to make it a little more functional, maybe for a boxer or a sprinter, I would just give them a short stance. Not long, because that puts you in too much rotation and too much extension. just kind of a normal stride stance, heel up in the back, that's the propulsive action of it. And I would do the same thing, whether it be with the ball or without the ball. All right? So you may want to start without the ball and then add this back in. Same thing here. Now it's natural to get a little movement. As long as my hip moves with my shoulder, that's okay. If my shoulders are going this way and my hips don't go with me, I'm getting a lot of torque. Okay? So nice and stable down low. All right? And then of course I'd have to switch sides. So that would be the third level. Once they build awareness, we lengthen them slightly, just tweak the rotation a little bit, and really make that carry over into any sort of sport that involves you moving the lower body and upper body opposite ways of each other. So that's the tight rotation progression. Moving on with our CNS activation warm-up progressions, we have 2 more exercises to go, and this is the pogo progression. Now, there really is no progression to the pogos, so you would really only use these last 2 exercises for your intermediate and advanced level athletes. I would omit these 2 exercises for your beginner, your level 1 people. The people that you're doing this stuff with and this stuff with, I wouldn't do these next 2 exercises. So, there's only 1 application for each of our next 2 exercises. So, the pogo. What you want to do, hands open. This kind of reinforces fundamental sprinting patterns. If you ever look at any of the top sprinting coaches or sprinters, they normally have their hands open or at least relaxed, just not a tight fist. We want to reinforce that as much as we can because good running mechanics help in all sports. We want to have our elbows fairly 90 degrees, maybe a little beyond is okay, nice and tall. And what we're going to do is instead of jumping off of our toes like we did in the heel bounce in the beginning, which was just like this, and you could either leave the ground or you could just do quick little calf raises. So a little change in the impact there. We're going to actually flick our toes up. Okay? So if you're looking at my foot, ankle, every time I jump, I'm going to dorsiflex. Okay? Now dorsiflexion doesn't mean hip flexion. So instead of doing like a dolphin move, I want to keep my body very straight and stable to reinforce this pattern that we talked about in the march. So what I'm going to do, right here, okay, staying tall from a profile, I'm thinking about a string attached to my hands, feeding down to my tops of my feet like my toes, and as my hands go up, my feet go up. Same time, okay? That helps you with jumping, see the same timing and rhythm, Olympic lifting, exploding up out of the gate, anything. It's all timing and rhythm. That's what we've been talking about. So, as fast as I can go. Alright, we normally start with 30 reps, and we'll add 5 reps for 4 or 5 weeks until you get to 50 reps. We'll rest 10 to 15 seconds and do 1 to 3 sets of those. So it really depends on your level of athlete on that one. So again, toes up, straight body, breathe normal, as fast as you can go. That's the pogo jump. Alright, here we are with our final CNS activation progression. We just did the low pogo, now we're going to do the high pogo. Again, as I said earlier, in the low pogo and the high pogo are reserved for only your intermediate and advanced level athletes. So if you're an athlete yourself, and you've been exercising for a while, you have no joint limitations, pains, no problems with your knees or ankles, this is perfectly fine to do. But if you can't do skips and jumping jacks, like all the level 2s and 3s, I would omit these and just finish off without doing the pogos. Alright, so high pogo. Same concept, except in the low pogos we kept our knees fairly straight. Here we're actually going to bend our knee, try to get some air time, let our arms cycle, okay, transfer that force, just like we talked about. Force from the ground, channel through the body to the shoulders and out through the hands. And try to get air time, but also minimize ground contact time. The technical term for that is the amortization phase. So the time that you hit the ground and come back up. The best cue that I give people when I'm training is I say pretend that there's hot lava on the ground, and as soon as you hit it, you want to get off that ground, hot coals. Get off as fast as you can. All right, so high pogo. We started the low pogo. Now we're just going to go here, bend the knees, explode up. All right, from a profile, again, trying to avoid this whole dolphin maneuver. A little hip flexion is okay, just not something that's really obvious. All right, that's what we want to try to avoid. So slight bend, pop in the shoulders. Bringing the toes up. Okay, great plyometric exercise to even throw in to prep for your power training. That's why we throw it into our warm-up. And the reason why it's the last part of our warm-up is because anytime we're doing power-oriented movements, which are CNS dominant, central nervous system dominant, this brings us right into that. So a key to designing warm-ups is that the last exercise you use in your warm-up should be very close to the first exercise you're going to do in the primary goal of your session. So if the primary goal of my session is to improve transfer, it's speed or power, and I'm using jumps or quick sprints, this would be a great exercise to prepare and finish your warm-up with to go right into those exercises. So that's the final exercise in our CNS warm-up activation series. The creative warm-up progressions demonstrated in this video will not only allow you to enhance your clients' and athletes' performance more effectively, but add tremendous value to the services that you offer. On behalf of myself and the Performance University team, we want to personally thank you for your interest in our work and promise to continue to deliver the best in performance education.